gentle soul, will look with a sense of humor, a wry sense of humor about yesterday's coronation of Charles III. Now, if I remember it right, the first Charles first didn't fare so well. I think he lost his head. I'll tell you just a little bit about McCauley Street. I hope you'll understand the attraction. It happened during those tumultuous 1970s when we were always, and in memory we'll always be young, men and women. Chapel Hill was in transition, UNC Chapel Hill, in the sense that it had been a village, a very small, isolated village with a big university. But the 70s was changing. Women were coming on campus. It had been all men's school, basically, up until the 1960s. So by the time we got there in mid-70s, things were kind of happening for men and women in Chapel Hill, which was no longer going to be, as it is not now, a small town. It's not a village. However, McCauley Street, where Alan Belsham and Jerry Lanier and Bruce first moved into McCauley Street, 230 McCauley Street, was 2 blocks west of campus. 2 blocks. Downtown was probably 2.5 blocks away. It became for 7 years a place where people crashed, people lived, people came and went. We had parties, we had poker games, we had rotating dinners which turned into tremendous parties. I'm not quite sure how Bruce ever got a PhD. But he was one of the most diligent of us all and the voice of reason for many. And for that reason, whether you actually lived there or not, and a limited number of us did, had that privilege of being there, it was a place a lot of people came, friends and family. And so it was well known to many, many of us. And they're spread all across the United States, now Texas, California, Portland, Maine, many, many places. They all wish they could be here to this tribute and celebration of Bruce throughout. And so it was a very special place to us all. And a real outside memory in a life that went so many different directions for so many people. Bruce first went to Elon, then came Elon College in Central North Carolina, Piedmont, and then came Youngstown. But our friendships continued after that. Maybe because at least Jerry Lanier, your deceased friend from last year, Alan Belsham, myself, and others were small town people that seemed to roll into our blood. A couple of us were deep south people. I was, Bruce, of course, from northern Louisiana, Jerry from southeast North Carolina, Alan from Iowa, farm country. So we had that connection going to the big city. There's much dating and courting going on in those days on both sides of the sexes. Barry and Bruce, of course, were in the 70s and right in the middle of the founding of McCauley Street, beginning their relationship. Bruce often escaped to Greensboro from us to go see Mary, his dear love, in this period. But he was always the voice of reason for all of us, and a good, humored person at that. We could tell stories about Louisiana corruption, Louisiana with a humor that you wouldn't believe. He knew all the old stories. He could tell them so well. I often joke with him, coming to Youngstown, he really understood Youngstown before he ever got here. He also spoke of being a guide on lakes in Minnesota. Something he returned to the last time I saw him, talking about being a canoe guide on the lakes in Minnesota. I say with poker every night, poker every Wednesday night. I think Bruce maintained a steady poker game even here in Youngstown for many years, and the study of the human condition, and he was very good at it. After McCauley Street, we didn't see each other as much, but we did gather groups of us, particularly us men folk, gathered in various places. He would talk about his pride in his students here at Youngstown, and how much he cared about his students, how much he found them to be involved in what he was doing. And I thought that was reiterated many, many times. And of course the family. He was talking about Mary and Russell and Adam incessantly and with great pride and love for his family. Gambling's still there, but again, I think the gambling is part of the human condition. He was pretty good at it himself, and he could take your money and you smile at him. We've met in many locations. Met at my home in Chapel Hill, Alan Parnell's and Ann's house, Carn and Alan's house in Frederick. Over the years, Ticonderoga, we met up in the valley, we met at Civil War battlefields. I had kind of an affinity for Revolutionary Civil War battlefields. They seemed to be convenient for us to stop in. Last time I saw Bruce, we had a service last August for Jerry Lanier. Jerry had been an ambassador to Sudan and Uganda and had dementia and Alzheimer's passed, one of our dear friends. And Bruce made the journey all the way to southeast North Carolina for a memorial service. Kind of one of the originals from McCullough Street. And of course, one of the last things he did was say, I'll see you in the spring of this year. Because he's always looking forward. He never looked backward. That was in August of last year. I want to echo what Russell said about his dad. His dad had a great mind. I think all of us loved talking to Bruce. He was inquisitive, incisive in his questions. He could always seem to get to the heart of the matter sometimes in a very gentle way. But he could cut through it all, cut right to the heart of the issue. I think one of my last discussions with him in July of last year was about whether George Washington was a great man or not. And his radical soul was taking the other point of view. Not a great man necessarily, everyone. It made great sense when we first talked about it. His kindness, his sensitivity, which you said was amazing. As formidable intellect as he was never was there. One of his last, he also talked to his last time we met about reading Shelby Foote's trilogy about the Civil War. In his last year, he chose to reread that and wanted to discuss that with me. And we spoke at length about that. That is a piece of narrative history and also American history and what that was all about. Also, he wrote and sent to us on December 26th of last year, the novel he wrote, which I don't know if any of you got the chance to look at that. I printed it and read it. Enjoyed it very much. Let me see if I can remember. Does anybody remember that's called? That's it, yeah. And Bruce sent us that with a note that I thought was so fitting of Bruce, I couldn't believe. He basically was saying to us, what did he say? Very funny, he said, I am not a novelist. Philosophers generally write abominable fiction. So no one should feel any obligation whatsoever to read any part of this, of the attachment I send, nor even open it up. Consider it like receiving a ghastly watercolor that you have hidden in your basement. Best wishes to you all for improving health, wonderful times with friends and family. By Bruce. That was so fitting. In my mind, Bruce spent a lifetime exploring the human condition and trying to make sense of it, as we all do. In my mind, also, he was one of the best people I